Thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming to my talk. I managed to get sick on the way here, so please excuse me for sounding like a crossbreed between General Grievous and Donald Duck. I hope you will be able to understand what I'm saying. So, anyway, yes, my presentation is a comparative study of the way religion, in general, religion as a sphere of culture, is represented in two digital games, Baldur Gate 3 and Warhammer Rock Trader. So, just for me to understand, who here have played it shouldn't be like that. Okay. Who here have played Baldur's Gate 3 or have some familiarity with it? And Warhammer Rock Trader, I mean specifically video game.
Yeah.
Okay. Some people. Oh, okay. Basically, my research is part of my broader dissertation focused on the analysis of the way role-playing games, both digital and analog tabletop, represent religion. Influence of popular culture and video games in particular on our understanding of religion have been a promising venue of research among scholars for some time, right? For example, scholars like I think Harvard proposed an idea of a ban on religion, a representation of decontextualized and non-intentional religious meaning. Basically, to put in simple terms, we see religion in pop culture constantly, even if we do not entirely reflect that we're seeing religious imagery, religious characters, religious ideas, and as a process of secularization continues in global West, let's put it like that, pop culture becomes a more and more widespread place for people to encounter the religious imagery, to encounter religion, and to gain understanding of what religion is and what religion is about, who believers are, and so on and so on. Of course, this does not mean that many people would follow imagined religions of media franchises, although there are some anecdotal examples of that. One of them is insane. And however, our general understanding of what a religion is, what does it mean to practice a religion in general, is becoming more and more informed by popular culture, including video games and tabletop RPGs. The decision to focus on Dungeons & Dragons and Warhammer and to compare them is, I think, quite natural. Those two franchises directly influenced a number of other popular fantasy worlds like Elder Scrolls, Warcraft, etc., etc., etc. Perhaps even more importantly, despite the relatively, by pop cultural standard, venerable age, both franchises themselves are still very successful. As we can see, I know by the fact that those two games were released quite recently to an overwhelming financial success. However, here comes the problem. The sheer size of those franchises, and even more importantly, the extremely free-form way of primary interaction with them, makes it very hard to grasp a general understanding of what does those franchises in general understand by religion. Basically, people play D&D or play Warhammer in their homes or in their clubs, and it is hard to understand, to interview each and every one of them and to be sure what exactly those franchises themselves mean by religion. And video games come to the rescue. Both Baldur's Gate 3 and Warhammer Rock Trader are obviously commercially successful, and more importantly, both were made in relatively close cooperation with franchise owners, Wizards of the Coast and Games Workshop, respectively. That means that, first, those games represent an understanding of the fictional worlds desired or at least tolerated by a franchise holder. Again, the level of control was different, but still it was present, so they wouldn't contradict the way franchise owners wanted the worlds to portray. And I think even more importantly, their success means that for a lot of people, those games would be the gateway to those franchises. So however franchise owners feel about it, a lot of people's understanding of Forgotten Realms or Warhammer 40k would be informed by Warhammer of Traitor, Baldur's Gate 3. It makes them a good research object, small enough for me to be able to analyze them without analyzing like 1,000 different books, yet representative enough. So while speaking about them, I can claim to be speaking about franchises they present. Claims about being represented. So I adopt the definition of religion provided by Leonid Moyzhes as a set of practices intended to mediate the transcendental, spiritual, or supernatural, make them accessible for believers. It is somewhat problematic. I won't go into details why, but it is it works well enough. Just to clarify, if any of you can define religion, you would like make my entire discipline obsolete. So people have to adopt some sort of ad hoc for a particular purpose. It is important to emphasize that following the tradition of religious phenomenology, I understand those terms diegetically from inside the universe. That is, an entity is considered transcendental, is approached as transcendental by imagined inhabitants of the secondary world in question. We, as players, researchers, know that the transcendental status of emperor of mankind or absolute in Baldur's Gate 3 is shaky at best. However, for the imagined followers, they most definitely are transcendental. This brings us to the main analytical tool of my research, a Ninian Smart idea of dimension of the sacred. Ninian Smart, I really like all the puns that are made possible by his surname. Ninian Smart idea was to combat a traditionally Christian-centric approach of Western academia to understanding what religion is and to describing religion, etc., etc., etc. He proposed a classification of different, basically, elements of religion. His idea was that more or less all religion include, to some degree, every dimension, but their relative importance for individual practitioners, for like high prescribed vision of religion and so on, can be very, very different. Well, just to give a very brief example, according to Smart, mythological dimension, that is dimension which comprises all important narratives for the religion, is crucial for Christianity, with the life of Christ being like fundamental and everything else being built on top of it, like doctrinal dimension and intellectual coherent expression of the main ideas of religion, explains why Christ was like that. Ethical dimension are teaching of Christ, and ritual dimension are rituals intended to recreate this mythological story, and so on and so on. For example, for classical Buddhism, doctrinal dimension would be central, the philosophy of a particular person who tried to teach how the world works according to him, but other dimensions later grew up of that. So my idea was to look at religions in those two games and try to organize the elements according to those dimensions. Which dimensions of religion are more important, which are less important, and what is therefore religion according to game developers, who obviously did not intend to make any coherent statement about this question when they started developing their games, but still had to. Well, I hope there's no need for me to explain what those dimensions in themselves are. I think the names are pretty self-explanatory. I can go in more details in the Q&A section. So, my two main research questions was what architecture of religious dimensions those games present, and how much do they differ from one another? Like all of those games present a number of religions, and do those religions are those religions organized differently? And what historical religions share those architectures? Like basically, what was the model the developers used when they were creating their own religion? And most future research question, so I would try speculating if I have some time. What are the ideological implications of the way that religion is portrayed this particular way in those games? So, how much time?
That's fine. No. Got plenty of time. So.
Nice. So, the last bit of theoretical consideration is the idea of possibility to engage. Basically, games present us with possibility to create a narrative. There are two elements to that. First, we can make actual actions in game, like moving there, walking there, choosing a particular dialogue option, and so on. Second, we can interpret what we see. We see an image, and we can interpret it in a certain way. We hear the term saint, and we obviously can interpret it as having a religious meaning, as being associated with Christianity, and etc., etc., etc. So, as far what is important here is that narrative are not created on the screen. It's always created in our head using affordances presented by the game, both as affordances to make some objective action, virtual but objective, and as an affordances to interpret what we see on the screen in a certain context. For example, by claiming that those are good guys and those are bad guys, and so on and so on, etc., etc., etc. For example, Warhammer Rock Trader present us with affordances to claim that Imperium are good guys. And it tries not to present us with affordances to claim that Chaos are good guys as well. We can, in principle, if we kind of miss the mark by 1,000 miles, but still it is the way that game developers police our understanding of what the hell is going on. And those particular affordances in case of religion allow us to organize those dimensions of religion, which I mentioned before, into 3 different groups. Core religious dimensions are those that provide a lot of affordances to engagement, meaning however you play, you will encounter those elements of religion, and a few affordances to avoid. Peripheral religious dimension provide affordances to both engage and avoid them as part of the narrative you are creating in your head. I will go to the example a bit later, but just so I can put this in context. Typical example of peripheral religious dimension would be religious dimension only mentioned in an optional books as part of the game. You can read about this if you are extremely curious, like have a tendency to read any text included in the game, but you can easily finish the game and so what appears to be 99.9999% of the content without even remembering that the thing is there. Finally, hidden religious dimensions do not provide a lot of affordances to engage with them at all. Basically, according to game developers, those are not do not belong to those things. Not belong to the religion. Their religions do not have those dimensions. So. What do we say? For simplicity, I took 4 counts because those games have a lot more, both of them. And as I was leaving, they released the DLC to Warhammer Rock Trader, which I saw is adding Gene Stealer out there. So it complicates matter, but here there are 4 religions. 2 from Warhammer Rock Trader, and I would like to emphasize that I'm analyzing specifically Emperor's Cult as presented in this game, as well as specifically Chaos Cult of Final Dawn, not Chaos Worship in general. And well, in case of Baldur's Gate 3, it's a bit simpler. I'm analyzing Cult of an Absolute, basically the main antagonist of the game, and it was a bit hard to find any sort of good religion in this game, so I just basically chose the worship of the god Ilmater, god of suffering and alleviating of suffering. So, What are the findings? First of all, and I think this is basically the most important part, social dimension of religion appears as core in all of those games and in all of those religions. Basically, according to both of those game developers, to practice religion is to behave in a certain way in a society. It can vary differently. In case of Will Matter, to practice a religion is to heal the sick. In case of Final Dawn, to practice a religion is to burn people alive. But the principle is the same. You follow a god by imposing upon society a certain vision of how that society should run. And this, I believe, is the most widespread understanding of religion in popular culture, strongly encoding understanding of religion in video games as stemming from outsider perspective. It's similar to the way a secular person encounter religion, like whether belong to it or not, we often encountered as some sort of religious group or religious institution attempts to change the society by influencing its social morals. Another extremely interesting thing is that, okay, in case of Warhammer Rock Trader, specifically Cult of the Emperor is obviously a good thing. We've talked a lot about, during the last 2 days, about reinterpretation of Warhammer lore, Imperium, War Against Chaos, and so on. But in Rock Trader, it is obviously at least a lesser evil, if not something outright good. And what is interesting here is that in both of those games, good religion represent a very strong ethic. You cannot avoid mentions of religious ethics when you interact with Imperium characters and so on and so forth. Similar with Ilmater, basically, in case of Cult of Ilmater, it boils down to nothing else. However, both of those antagonistic cults, Final Dawn and Absolute, have no ethic at all. I mean, it is not destructive, it is just not there. We kind of know that Final Dawn is an organization intending to overthrow the order in the system, but we do not know how exactly are they supposed to, what are they supposed to believe, how they should behave aside from fighting against the status quo. And with all other things, we can easily see that to different degree, they are peripheral. Like depending on how much attention developers pay to the particular religious system, basically how filled they want their world to be, they can put more or less text about it. If you are curious about, I don't know, imperial mythology, about imperial saints and everything, you can read about it, you can participate in the dialogues about it, you can know more about who this saint is, who this saint is, but it is not a core dimension, it's paraphernalia, basically. The same as with doctrinal or even ritual dimension of religion. The last thing being, in my own opinion, an extremely curious one, considering the fact that like ritual dimension of most religions is the most typical way a lot of us encounter it, but in video games it is absent or almost absent. The only religion here which pays a lot of attention to rituals is Final Dawn, and basically the only ritual we see of them is a ritual burning out of the ice, which obviously encodes them as not a very good person, not very good people. What are the implications of this? Like, what understanding of religion popular culture provide? First of all, religion is an organization. If it provides some sort of coherent ethics, it is good, because this ethics can be used to make a religion work for common good. But it is not necessary. Religion can be only organization, and in that case, it would most likely become something bad, something aimed at destroying society on which it becomes a parasite. Religion is not basically an intellectually fulfilling endeavor. Doctrinal, mythological dimensions are not necessary for religion. They can be present, but they're bonus. Religion almost always cannot be practiced in private, because ritual dimension, what you could do, is often absent or toned down. If you want to practice religion, go and change the society. And emotional dimension of religion is basically absent at all. The fact that religions can and often do attempt to work with people's psyches by insisting on the fact that some emotional situations are preferable to others, is forgotten. The only game where, well, I'm not even sure it would be prudent to include the idea of emotional dimension in Emperor's Cult and Warhammer Rock Traders, since basically by emotional dimension in this game, I meant that Emperor's followers are supposed to be angry at Xenos, at cultists, and so on and so on. Like, there are venerated emotions, rightful anger. Other cults do not ignore it. Why is it like that? To be honest, for now, I do not know. This is the topic of my entire dissertation. However, one obvious cause to approach religion like that would be to use so-called cults, real-world cults, as a model for religion in general. Like 20th century, second half of 20th century, saw both the proliferation of cults and proliferation of paranoia about cults. A lot of people, I don't know, maybe some of the people present can remember how when they were young, their parents would be, oh my God, be careful, do not join this horrible cult, and so on and so on. This was very popular, basically urban legends and scary stories in post-Soviet Russia, for example. And basically cults serve as a model for representing religion, as a would be more correct to say a myth about cults. This outsider group which convert people into their members, and they're nothing except this conversion itself to the cults. Like, social dimension is private. You do not gain any sort of ethics, you do not have any sort of practice or important mythology. You are just becoming different. You're just becoming this, well, zombie-like member of some sort of society. And this is obviously not really sensitive and potentially problematic understanding of religion, which is unfortunately widespread in both of those extremely influential pop cultural products. So, I think number 5, interesting, and if you want to ask some more questions or just chat about it, you can find me in Telegram.
Cool, thank you very much.